You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Obviously, I'm gonna start with the NFL, specifically Buccaneers, Panthers. We saw Sam Darnold under center once again. We knew that we were going to get some Cam Newton, but with a healthy mix of Sam Darnold. I will say this. Newton started the game, and Darnold didn't get in until the second quarter. So Newton had 2 drives to show what he could do, and all he mustered was 3 points. It's interesting to think about, would Matt Rule have kept Darnold on the sidelines if Newton had been killing it? But obviously, Newton was ineffective. He's really been ineffective in his return to the league ever since the Washington game. At the end of the day, the Panthers really need Sam Darnold to work out. They've invested a lot in him. They're locked into him for one more season. Matt Rule got rid of a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater who, isn't great, but at the very least gives you a chance to win every Sunday. The Broncos are 7-8 right now. I mean, yesterday's game against the Raiders was the first game this year that Bridgewater didn't start for the Broncos. Drew Lock got the start. The fact that the Broncos looked as bad as they did, Drew Lock really looking ineffective, the running game not getting going, the Broncos only mustering 158 total yards, that's a feather in Bridgewater's cap. The Broncos never did anything like that with Bridgewater at the helm. Again, he hasn't been great. No one's going to mistake him for Peyton Manning anytime soon, but he gives you a chance to win every Sunday. You look at the Panthers, they're 5-10. They're playing musical quarterbacks, and you're locked into a guy for another season who no one has any confidence in. Find me a single Panthers fan with a high degree of confidence in Sam Darnold. Seriously. This guy has been putrid for the Panthers. Everything that I said about him last year has been proven correct. Believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. I mean, the reality is this may be a glimpse into the Panthers' future. you're locked into Darnold for another year. The Darnold that you saw early in the year was an aberration. Even Matt Rule will admit that. You know how I know he'll admit that? Because he fired the offensive coordinator. You don't fire the offensive coordinator if you have faith in the offense. If you have faith in the system to get Darnold back to what he was early in the season. The Panthers right now really have a desolate future. They only have 6 picks in this coming draft. They only have 1 pick in the first 3 rounds. They traded their 2nd rounder to the Jets, and they traded their 3rd rounder to the Jaguars. So just to recap, you have a quarterback that looks lost. You have a head coach that I have 0 faith in. That was the flavor of the month coming out of Baylor. The guy has done nothing in the NFL. And you only have 1 pick in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Talk about a trade down candidate. You're going to see this a lot next year. We're at the point in the NFL season where, for some teams, it's look to next season time. We had 4 teams clinch a playoff spot yesterday. Some teams were mathematically eliminated yesterday. Some teams suffered killer losses. It's time to look to the future. The future for the Panthers is incredibly bleak. And again, the sad part to me is that this was so predictable. It was so predictable to me that Sam Darnold was going to fail. It was so predictable to me that Joe Brady would be exposed as an overrated offensive mind. You want to tell me the jury's still out on Matt Rule? Look, David Tepper invested a lot of money in him. It's fair to want immediate results when you give him that type of contract. Back-to-back double-digit loss seasons is literally the worst possible return on investment Tepper could get. I mean, make no mistake about it, Rule is going to be on the hot seat next year. And you've got him saying that the Panthers are making progress, but no one can see it. Are you kidding me? Out of the literally million possible things that you could have said, you chose the worst possible one. What progress? You just lost 32-6 at home. You were 10.5-point underdogs at home. Back-to-back double-digit lost seasons. No quarterback. No future. No nothing. There's progress being made? Are you kidding me? Did Christian McCaffrey have a 200-yard game? Did Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore look like the second comings of Jerry Rice and Randy Moss? What on earth did I miss? Don't give me this garbage that you saw progress. Just be honest. Yeah, we stink. There's progress right now, but no one can see it. Oh my gosh. What, do I need special glasses to see the progress? Here's a news flash, bozo. You've lost 5 straight. You've got 2 games left. You travel to New Orleans, and then you travel to Tampa Bay. So guess what? Odds are you're going to finish the season losing 7 straight games. Back-to-back 5-win seasons. What progress is that? Oh, Panthers fans, I feel sorry for you. You guys don't deserve this. And I feel bad for David Tepper. I think he's a smart guy. He has a lot of money, not afraid to spend it. I think he really wants to see the Panthers win a Super Bowl. But boy, oh boy, was he taken for a ride by this clueless head coach. Give him a bunch of money to leave Baylor. The Giants dodged a bullet, and so did the Jets. There is no hope in North Carolina right now. Congrats to the Buccaneers for clinching the NFC South. All right, we all know they're going to be a force to be reckoned with come the playoffs. Before the season started, I picked a Bills-Buccaneers Super Bowl with the Bills winning it. You can't tell me that's impossible. The Buccaneers look like a great team. It wouldn't stun me if they represented the NFC in the Super Bowl for a second straight year. It wouldn't stun me if they even won a second straight Super Bowl. Tom Brady winning 8 Super Bowls. Good God. Imagine a Buccaneers-Patriots Super Bowl. Oh! Must-see TV. I understand that the Super Bowl is always must-see TV, but there are some matchups that are easier to get into than others. Last year it was easy to get into. Yeah, the old versus the new, Brady versus Mahomes. The year before that, it was sorta, kinda easy to get into. You didn't have a ton of people into the Niners, but Mahomes, yeah, you had people into him. Before that, though, Patriots-Rams, that didn't have a ton of juice behind it. Forget the result of the game. The lead up to it, you weren't overly invested in that game. The year before that, Eagles-Patriots, same thing. Incredibly exciting Super Bowl, but going into it, I don't think you were enthralled by it. Patriots-Falcons, same thing. Greatest Super Bowl of all time, but leading into it, you weren't into it. Buccaneers-Patriots, you would have non-football fans invested in that game. If you're conscious in this country, you know that Tom Brady used to play for the Patriots, and you know he was great for him. Now he's going up against his old team in the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'll watch it. But at the end of the day, the story of yesterday's Buccaneers-Panthers game isn't the Buccaneers. We knew the Buccaneers were great going into this game, and they proved their dominance all throughout that game. The story is the Panthers and how bleak their future is. I'm sorry, Panthers fans. I don't mean to sound like a fatalist, but I gotta call it like I see it. I am incredibly pessimistic about your future. In fact, there may be no team in the NFL that I'm more pessimistic about than the Panthers. Maybe the Giants? It's close. It's very, very close. I'll get into the Giants a little later, but I want to stick with the games that we saw yesterday. Specifically, Bills-Patriots. This was a big win for the Bills. They lost to the Patriots earlier this month in Buffalo. I understand that was an incredibly weird game, crazy weather, torrential blizzard. I mean, just a weird game. But at the end of the day, the Bills played like garbage. You have Josh Allen throw 30 passes? Are you kidding me? Take a hint from Belichick. He only has Mac Jones throwing 3 passes. What are you doing? They really needed to go into Foxborough and beat the Patriots. This was a must-win game for them. Winning this game actually puts them ahead of the Patriots in the standings. Yes, they're tied record-wise, but the Bills have the tiebreaker. So the Bills are the 4 seed right now. The Patriots are the 6 seed. That means something. You want home field advantage. Even if it's just for 1 round. I mean, they went into Foxborough and from the word go, really looked like the better team. I mean, the Patriots never led. You've got the Bills dropping 33 points on one of the best defenses in the NFL. And while they couldn't stop Damian Harris looked like the second coming of Sam Cunningham. He had 18 carries for 103 yards and 3 touchdowns. They were able to stop Mac Jones. Jones completed just 14 of his 32 passes for 145 yards. He got picked off twice. It seems like Jones is coming down to earth a little bit. He had the dreadful game against the Colts last week. Now, yesterday, in a must-win game for the Patriots, he lays an egg. Puts up just a 31.4 quarterback rating. So much for him being the golden boy, right? And I don't want this to come off as me giving up on Mac Jones. Just to be clear, I was never a believer in Mac Jones. Even when the Patriots were winning, I was never a huge believer in Jones. I think he's just a game manager. Can you make a living doing that? Yeah, but is he really the long-term answer for the Patriots? Let me ask you something, Patriots fans. For the next 15 years, do you want a game manager as your quarterback? Or do you want someone who can be the best player on a winning football team? You want the latter, right? Yeah, I don't think that'll ever be Mac Jones. I mean, make no mistake about it, we're going to have a dogfight in the AFC East. Next week, the Bills will host the Falcons, and the Patriots will host the Jaguars. I think it's safe to say that both the Bills and Patriots are winning next week. The week after that, it gets a little interesting. The Bills will host the Jets. That's a win for the Bills. The Patriots will travel to Miami to face the Dolphins. That's a tough game. The Dolphins have won 6 straight. If they're still in the playoff mix, they're going to be gunning for this game. Even if they're out of it, they'd like to play spoiler to the big bad Patriots. That's not a walk in the park. I mean, the Patriots really had to win this game to have a good chance of winning the AFC East. Now, will they make the playoffs? The answer is yes, but it's going to be as a wild card team. I could see myself picking the Dolphins in that game. I mean, who knows who the Patriots will end up facing in the playoffs, but I'll say this. If the season ended today, they'd have to travel to Cincinnati to face the Bengals. I'm picking the Bengals in that game. The Patriots seem to be coming back down to earth. Their quarterback seems to be coming back down to earth. I do not view the Patriots as a Super Bowl threat, and I definitely don't view Mac Jones as a franchise quarterback. Moving on now to Rams-Vikings. The Rams won 30-23. They are now guaranteed to be in the playoffs. And at this very moment, they're the 3 seed. They are leading the NFC West. The Cardinals are choking. They've lost 3 straight. They are now the 5 seed. Meanwhile, the Rams have won 4 straight. They're the 3 seed. Remember when people were doubting the Rams? Remember when people were criticizing Sean McVay? Yeah, those people look pretty foolish right about now. Look, the Rams had a terrible November. They went winless. They lost all 3 of their games in November. Week 11 was their bye week. What have they done after that? Won 4 straight. They beat up on the Jaguars, which they really needed to do. Sometimes, if you're a great team and you're struggling, what you really need is to go up against a bad team and just beat the living crap out of them. That's what the Rams did against the Jaguars. Then they beat the Cardinals in Glendale. That was a really impressive win. They beat the Seahawks. Not the most impressive win ever, but still, a win's a win. And they beat a good Vikings team in Minneapolis. It's impossible to be upset about this win if you're a Rams fan. You want to tell me you're upset at Matthew Stafford? Fair. The guy threw for under 200 yards, and he had 3 interceptions. But Sonny Michel looked like the second coming of Marshall Faulk. If he had done this earlier in the season, I wouldn't have been in the consolation bracket of the fantasy league that I have him in. Michel had 27 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown. Better late than never, I guess, for him to come alive. Cooper Kupp had an outstanding game because of course he did. 10 catches for 109 yards. Odell Beckham caught the only passing touchdown of the game for the Rams. He seems to be getting a little more comfortable in the Rams offense. Granted, he hasn't been fantastic, but in 4 of his last 5 games, he has a touchdown catch. I'll take it. Like, if that's how the Rams are going to use Beckham as a red zone threat, I'm okay with that because you have Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee to do everything else. I mean, I'll say this. I don't care how the standings shake out. The Rams are a better team than the Cardinals. By far. I don't even think it's close. Like, I saw this question on Twitter, and it was interesting to me that someone else had this thought. I thought I was, like, the only one. But how good really is Cliff Kingsbury? Like, at the end of the day, part of being a good coach is not letting your team fade away. Like, yeah, you got them off to a great start, that's okay, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I got this from Damon Amendolara's Twitter account. Cliff Kingsbury, at the start of a season, and start is defined loosely all throughout this. Some seasons it's 7 games, other seasons it's 2 games, but it's still worth mentioning. At the start of a season, Kingsbury is 42-12-1. That's a .773 winning percentage. At the end of a season, he's 16-50. That's a .242 winning percentage. Let's not forget the epic collapse that happened last year. They started 6-3. They finished 2-5. This year, will they make the playoffs? The answer is yes. But at some point, you've got to take a step forward. I'm not saying that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be fired. I mean, I'm not a Cliff Kingsbury fan. He gets credit for drafting Kyler Murray. He gets credit for moving on from Josh Rosen and taking Kyler Murray. I will give him credit for that. But given what Kyler Murray has turned into, don't give me any garbage that Cliff Kingsbury is responsible for Kyler Murray's success. I'll take Kyler Murray on my team in a heartbeat. And Kingsbury can stay in Arizona. It's kind of easy to have a good offense when you have him and DeAndre Hopkins. There's a saying in sports. Some coaches are phase 1 guys. They will get the ship pointed in the right direction, but as far as actually reaching that ultimate destination, someone else needs to come in. That's Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury is a stage 1 guy to me. I will give him credit for putting the Cardinals on the right path. I was a big Josh Rosen fan coming out of UCLA. I hated the decision to move on from him. I would have just taken Nick Bosa, but there's no question that drafting Kyler Murray and moving on from Josh Rosen was the right decision. That decision put the Cardinals on the right path. The thing is, though, while they have the right trajectory, they're still low on that trajectory. And I think it's fair to wonder if Cliff Kingsbury will ever get them there. I'm not saying he's going to be fired. He's not. But I don't think he's a great coach. And I don't think the Cardinals will ever win a Super Bowl with him. This choke job that we're seeing right now, it means something. It means something that it's part of a terrible history. Cliff Kingsbury is one of the most overrated coaches in the NFL. That was some tangent. Wow. I started that with Rams Vikings. I understand that the Rams just took over first place in the NFC West from the Cardinals, but still, that was some tangent. It's okay though, I don't mind it. Let's go now to Ravens Bengals. Josh Johnson made his first start since week 17 of the 2018 Redskins season. And Johnson wasn't bad yesterday. He completed 28 of his 40 passes for 304 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns. He had an interception, and he put the ball on the ground twice, but he didn't lose any of those fumbles. He wasn't bad. He played as well as you could possibly expect him to play. We all know the long and winding road that Josh Johnson had to travel to get to the Baltimore Ravens. Give him credit for not embarrassing himself. But the real story is Joe Burrow having a game for the ages. And that is not hyperbolic. Burrow completed 37 of 46 passes for 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. Those 525 yards obviously is the new Bengals record. The record was previously held by Boomer Esiason. He had 490 yards in a game against the Rams on October 7th, 1990. And those 525 passing yards that Burrow had puts him 4th all-time on the all-time NFL passing yards single-game leaderboard. Norm Van Brocklin has the record with 554. Matt Schaub and Warren Moon, 2 former Houston quarterbacks, how funny is that, are tied for 2nd with 527. Burrow's 4th with 525. If only a guy like T. Higgins or Jamar Chase or Tyler Boyd, whoever, could have gotten just 3 more yards, Burrow would have had 2nd all time. Zach Taylor is the coach of the year. It's either him or Frank Reich. Nick Sirianni is in the conversation, but I don't think the Eagles are as good as the Bengals and Colts. And at the end of the day, the Bengals were just so bad last year. Burrow getting hurt. I mean, for the Bengals to have the season that they're having after going 4-11-1, that means something. And also, last year, the Colts did make the playoffs. I mean, I understand a new quarterback and the emergence of Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman for that matter, but what Taylor has done is more impressive. In fact, you make the argument that what Sirianni has done in Philly is more impressive than what Reich has done for the Colts. Again, the Eagles last year were 4-11-1. Now, season ends today, the Eagles are a playoff team. They're the 7th seed in the NFC. One thing that I've been concerned about with the Bengals is their lack of playoff experience. At the end of the day, the Bengals haven't been in the playoffs since 2015. They haven't won a playoff game since 1990. Obviously, no one is still around from the 90 team, and I don't know if there's anyone still around from the 2015 team. My guess would be no, but don't quote me on that. But at the end of the day, playoff experience means something. At the end of the day, veteran presence means something. The thing is, though, you watch this Bengals team play. I mean, season ends today, they're going up against the Patriots. They would beat the Patriots. Then they'd go up against the Titans in Tennessee. It's not out of the realm of possibility for them to beat the Titans. The way the Bengals are playing right now, Joe Burrow having one of the greatest games in regular season history. How can you not look at this team as a team that can make some noise in the playoffs? I'm not saying they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to win it. But it would not surprise me at all if the 31-year drought of never winning a playoff game was snapped. The lack of playoff experience used to scare me, but seeing what the Bengals are doing, I'm growing more and more confident. And I'll say this, if you had the Bengals winning the AFC North before the season started, and you don't live in Cincinnati or a suburb of Cincinnati, play lotto tonight. Like I said, Zach Taylor's the coach of the year. The last game that I want to talk about, but not the last NFL story, is Steelers-Chiefs. I've said for a while that I viewed the Chiefs as really the only elite team in the AFC. Did what they do earlier in the season scare me? The answer is yes, but out of every team in the AFC, I thought the Chiefs were head and shoulders above everyone else. No pun intended, since Mahomes does head and shoulders commercials. That thought was validated by what we saw yesterday. I understand that the Steelers are not world beaters. They've been a really disappointing team this year. It's kind of funny. The AFC North has one really surprising team in the Bengals and 3 big disappointments in the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns. The Ravens should be better than this. The Steelers really don't look that good from an eye test perspective, and the Browns should be a lot better than this. But I've got to be fair, the Steelers aren't a dreadful team. They're not great, but they're not dreadful. They entered that game above 500, 7-6-1. For the Chiefs to destroy them like they did, that's insane. Talk about clinching the AFC West in style. I mean, it's clear as day that the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. Am I going to stick with Bills Buccaneers? The answer is yes. I said it earlier in the season. I have to stick with it. But let's put it this way. I wouldn't bet the rent on it. Would it knock my socks off if the Bills beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? The answer is no, because I think the Bills are a great team. I just think that the Chiefs are better right now. Remember when we were leaving the Chiefs for dead? Patrick Mahomes was making stupid throws. He looked absolutely lost. The Chiefs were 3-4. Now they've won 8 straight. You know what game is going to be really telling? The Bengals game. Next week, the Chiefs play the Bengals in Cincinnati. Talk about must-see TV. What am I going to be watching? My team get creamed by the Buccaneers. The fun of being a Jets fan never ceases. The reality is, while the Bengals are really good and the Bills took a big step forward in winning a game that they needed to win yesterday. The Chiefs are the class of the AFC right now. It's just that simple. Moving on now to an incredibly disturbing report from Adam Schefter of ESPN. And we knew this for a while, but Schefter reporting it does give it an extra sense of validity. At the end of the day, he is the best NFL insider there is. Sorry, Ian Rappaport, but it's true. Schefter reported that the Giants are planning to bring Joe Judge and Daniel Jones back. Interestingly enough, while we've all thought that Dave Gettleman would be fired after this season, Schefter is kind of pouring cold water on that. His article says, and I quote, "Many sources around the league believe the Giants' big change will involve general manager Dave Gettleman, who could decide to step down after 4 seasons with the team." Could decide to step down. Not will step down, not will be fired. Could decide to step down. So, just to be clear, the New York Giants are going to let a GM with a combined record of 19-44 step down. Not even send a message that they're firing him. They'll let him leave on his own terms? Are you kidding me? You fire the guy after the season. Letting him step down should be reserved for people who have had success with the organization. Like, say that about Tom Coughlin. Say that about Jerry Reese. Say that about Bill Parcells. Don't say that about Dave Gettleman, a guy who's never had a single-digit loss season with the Giants. I mean, that gives the implication that you would have wanted him back if he didn't step down. Is there a chance that Dave Gettleman could come back for a 5th season? Maybe there is. I mean, after all, if the Giants are okay with bringing Judge and Jones back, it's not unfair to think that they'd be okay with bringing Gettleman back. If they're okay with this current team, they've got to be okay with the architect of the team, right? Look, I'll give the Giants a little bit of a pass. Because at the end of the day, I'm arguing about semantics. I do think it means something, but the bottom line is Dave Gettleman probably won't be back next year. Can't say it's 100% that he won't be back next year, but I think the smart money is on the Giants having a new GM. But you're going to saddle that new GM with Joe Judge, a 10-21 head coach, and Daniel Jones, a quarterback who, if I am being generous, is a game manager. Game managers give you a chance to win games. Daniel Jones hasn't done that. Daniel Jones' career record is 12-25. How can I call him a game manager? It literally boggles the mind that the Maras and the Tishes think that the best course of action is to fire the GM, but keep the head coach that he hired and the quarterback that he drafted. And we've heard the rumors that Kevin Abrams, the Giants' longtime assistant GM, is the favorite for the Giants' GM job. He's been with the Giants since '99. He's certainly paid his dues. I mean, at the end of the day, if the Giants wanted to hire Abrams after they canned Jerry Reese, I wouldn't have had too much of a problem with that. But now, it makes no sense. You are signaling to your fan base that you think the team is pointed in the right direction. This is despite the fact that in the last 5 seasons, you have gone 22-57. You think the team is pointed in the right direction? What are you watching? You want to tell me that the Giants have been hurt by injuries this year? Fine. Every team gets hit with injuries. They find ways to win. The Giants haven't done that. They're going to use this as an excuse and not make any major changes? Are you kidding? I mean, I don't know how desirable the Giants GM job would be. I've heard people say that the Giants are one of the NFL's marquee franchises. No, they're not. That's like saying that the New York Knicks are one of the NBA's marquee franchises. No, they're not. In order to be a marquee franchise, you need to win. Don't give me any argument about history. Don't tell me about Lawrence Taylor. Don't tell me about Sam Huff. Don't tell me about Y.A. Tittle. Don't tell me about Frank Gifford. Don't tell me about Jim Lee Howell. To be a marquee franchise, you need to win. The Giants haven't done that. I mean, one other thing, the Giants do not have a lot of cap flexibility. At this very moment, according to overthecap.com, they will only have $3.6 million in cap room. So they're going to need to make some really tough decisions. The obvious answer is trade Daniel Jones, but that's not a magic bullet. There's more that you need to do. Like, the new GM is going to have to make some really tough decisions. Because, yes, the Giants are going to have 2 high picks. At this very moment, they have 5 and 8. But not for nothing, they don't even have the cap room to sign those guys right now. If I was interviewing for that job, and if the Maras and Tishes said to me, you can bring in your own head coach and you can bring in your own quarterback, I still wouldn't be in love with that job. I mean, there's no immediate avenue to success for the Giants. Maybe that's what's behind this. Could it be that the Maras and the Tishes are thinking 2 steps ahead? They know that they're in a terrible position for 2022 in terms of the salary cap. So they want to wait until 2023 when they'll have the ability to create more cap room before they go on their big search? Is that what they're doing here? If that's what they're doing here, like, okay, in a weird way that makes sense. But boy, oh boy, are you doing Kevin Abrams dirty. Also, the thing is, that's not gonna fly with your fan base. This Giants fan base is tortured right now. It's a fan base that's used to winning. It's a fan base that's used to making Super Bowls. Giants haven't done that in a while. If that's the plan, throw 2022 away? Ooh, man. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you're a Giants owner, don't turn on New York Sports Talk Radio. I mean, that's also unfair to Joe Judge and Daniel Jones. I understand that you don't owe them anything. You can be unfair to them. That's okay. Don't be unfair to Abrams because he did win 2 Super Bowls. I understand that he wasn't the seminal reason why they won, but still he was there. He has 2 rings. You've got to be fair to him. Judge and Jones have won nothing. So you can be unfair to them if you want. But, ooh, man. That's not the Giants' way. If this is the new way of doing business in Giants land, fine. I'm okay with it. The old way wasn't working, so fine. Try a new approach. I'm just not sure if that's what's really happening here. If it is, wow. Okay. Again, in a weird way, it makes sense to punt 2022 away and play for 2023. But if they really think that this half-ass approach is the best way to put a good team out there for next season, Wellington Mara is turning over in his grave right now. And sadly for Giants fans, I really think that they think that this is the best way forward for your franchise for next season. We've just heard nothing saying that the reason why they're doing this is because the Giants are in a bad place with the salary cap, so they want to kick the full rebuild down the road. I just think the more likely reason is that the Giants think this is the best path for them going forward. And if that is true, Giants fans, I feel sorry for you. I mean, I don't like Giants fans because you guys did Eli Manning dirty. You guys waited way too long to get off the Daniel Jones bandwagon. I don't think you guys are that smart. I mean, you've got to use your noodle a little bit, okay? It's okay to criticize your franchise if they're doing something wrong. Now you're finally realizing that, but where were you about a year ago? I could have told you this wasn't going to work out a year ago. In fact, I did. No one supported me. Now, Giants fans, I think, are more in my boat that Judge and Jones and Gettleman too aren't the right guys for the job. The thing is, though, I'm not going to give you any credit for jumping off your ship to get on my ship when your ship has 1 million holes in it, and I told you about those holes many moons ago. You don't get credit for finally deciding to use your noodle after being told to use your noodle 1 million times. But look, the Giants are a joke. Is there a way forward for next season? The answer is no. The cap just won't let it happen. 2023, the answer is yes, but realize you're trusting the Maras and the Tishes to get this right. Do you have faith in them to get this right? It's okay if you don't. I'm not sure if I have faith in them to get it right. I understand what they did in the past, but what have you done for me lately? Nothing. Here's hoping that the Giants change their mind and they blow things up. At the end of the day, I'd rather give a new hierarchy as much time as possible to right the ship rather than expect them to hit the ground running in 2023. Like, let me ask you something, Giants fans. If a new GM came in with a plan that didn't involve contending next year, but did involve contending the year after, I feel like you'd be okay with that, right? Because you're bringing in someone new, someone who doesn't have the stigma of past Giants failures. I mean, I understand the notion of you don't want to throw any seasons away. I just don't see how you're going to be competitive in 2022. So give the new GM and the new head coach some latitude to get their feet under them. People talk about the learning curve for first-year quarterbacks. There's a learning curve for first-year GMs and first-year head coaches. No one has all the answers right away. You make mistakes, you learn from them, and then you don't do them again. Wouldn't you rather you make those mistakes in 2022 when you have no chance of doing anything rather than 2023 when you actually have the chance of doing something? I'm not saying this as a Jets fan that hates the Giants. I'm saying this as an NFL fan. Please, 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 John Mara and Steve Tisch, the head honchos of the Giants, blow everything up. Bring in a new GM and let him hire his own head coach and let them solve the quarterback position however they want to. Obviously, you need to move on from Daniel Jones. But you don't even need to draft a quarterback this year. Again, look at the picks that you have. 5 and 8. I don't think any quarterback in this draft is worthy of a top 10 pick. I think that there will be at least one quarterback that gets overdrafted because that's what happens with quarterbacks, the most important position in sports, but you don't need to be the team making that mistake. You can bring in a veteran stopgap for a year, a Teddy Bridgewater type, and then in 2023, make your big move for a quarterback. When you'll have guys like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and DJ Uiagalelei to pick from. Again, that is my true, unbiased opinion. Yes, I hate the Giants. Yes, I'm a huge Jets fan. But if I'm taking that hat off and I'm looking at it as an impartial observer, in my heart of hearts, I truly think that's the best way forward for the New York Football Giants. I'll close this show out with some college football Valk talk. The reason why this show is being posted early, like I said on the Jets recap, you're going to get this early every day this week except Wednesday. I just want to preview every bowl game. And I can't do that if the game is already in progress. So these shows have to come early. I can wait on Wednesday because the first game is set for 2:15. The Fenway Bowl was canceled, unfortunately. So yeah, every show this week except Wednesday will be early. But I want to talk about the bowl game that we saw on Christmas, the Camellia Bowl, Georgia State destroying Ball State. Look, I picked the Panthers in this game. I thought they had more firepower than the Cardinals. But I did not see this coming. I did not see a 51-20 rout in the offing. I mean, Georgia State absolutely dominated Ball State all throughout this game. The real turning point was the fumble return for the touchdown. Realize the Panthers had just tied the game up. You've got the Cardinals going on the next drive. And then they fumble the ball away. Georgia State takes the lead. And after that, they really look dead to the world. I mean, I understand that Ball State hung in there on the scoreboard. They were only down 20-13 at the half, but from an eye test perspective, Georgia State looked like the much more superior team. And that really manifested itself in the second half when Georgia State outscored Ball State 31-7. They outscored them 28-0 in the third quarter. It was just a complete runaway. Give Darren Granger a ton of credit. He completed 15 of 19 passes for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns. On the ground, he had 11 carries for 122 yards and a touchdown. Obvious statement of the year coming up. He was by far and away the best player on the field on Christmas. And you've got to give Aubrey Payne credit also, the tight end, for coming up big, having his best game of the year, 8 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, obviously, you've got to give Jamil Muhammad credit for forcing the fumble, and Javon Dennis credit for running it back to the house. But some other guys really impressed me also. Thomas Gore, Keon Carter, Bryquise Brown, Antavius Lane, John Trey Hunter, Hardrick Willis, Chris Moore, Jordan Veneziel, Blake Carroll. Like I said, Georgia State was by far and away the better team. Drew Plitt is not a bad quarterback, so give Georgia State credit for making his life difficult. Now, Plitt wasn't awful, but he wasn't great. I mean, at the end of the day, the real story is the Georgia State offense, led by Darren Granger, just destroying Ball State. There's not much that you can do there if you're Plitt or Ja'Shawn Jackson, who had 12 catches for 146 yards and a touchdown. It's not that Ball State was terrible offensively. They weren't. Georgia State was just the better team on Christmas. And quite frankly, it really wasn't close. But now it's time to preview today's bowl game, the Quick Lane Bowl. We've got Western Michigan going up against Nevada. The Broncos are a really well-rounded team. Like, give Tim Lester a ton of credit. If you'll recall, and it's okay if you don't, PJ Fleck, his last year in Kalamazoo, led the Broncos to a 13-1 season. They were actually in the Cotton Bowl that year and gave Wisconsin a run for their money. Wisconsin won 24-16. Fleck then went to Michigan, so Lester took over and has done a good job every year he's been there. He's never finished with a worse than 500 record. It would not surprise me at all if at some point in time he made the jump to a bigger program, much like Fleck did. In case you're wondering where Lester was before Western Michigan, he was Purdue's quarterbacks coach. He did play at Western Michigan in the mid to late 90s. He was their quarterbacks coach for a couple years, so that's how he got to Kalamazoo. But give Lester credit. He's done a really good job with this team. It is a very, very well-rounded team. Caleb Ellaby had a really good season, completed 63.6% of his passes for over 3,100 yards, 21 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. The running game is lethal. Sean Tyler had over 1,000 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. Ladarius Jefferson had 836 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. Through the air, Sky Moore was insane. He had 90 catches for 1,247 yards and 10 touchdowns. Jalen Hall and Corey Crooms were good second fiddles. Hall had 46 catches for 752 yards and 3 touchdowns. Crooms had 43 catches for 694 yards and 5 touchdowns. And give the offensive line credit, too. This is one of the better O-lines in the nation. Wesley French, Jacob Gideon, Mike Caliendo, Dylan Detheridge, and Mark Brooks are very, very talented O-linemen. Defensively, they have a really good front seven. Ali Fayed, Ralph Holly, Braden Fisk, Corvin Moment, Marshawn Nealand, and Zaire Barnes are all very talented. Like I said, this is a well-rounded Broncos team. Meanwhile, you look at the Wolfpack, they have no chance in this game. None whatsoever. Carson Strong isn't going to play. You know how I feel about players skipping their bowl games to prepare for the draft. I don't want to beat a dead horse. All I'm going to say is, without Strong, the Wolfpack have no chance. I understand that Romeo Doubs had a great season. 80 catches for 1,109 yards and 11 touchdowns. The thing is, though, a lot of that was due to Strong. Like, Strong had a season for the ages. Completed over 70% of his passes for over 4,100 yards, 36 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. The Wolfpack were really a one-man team. And now that one man isn't playing for him. Also, Jay Norvell will not be coaching in this game. He took over at Colorado State, so it'll be Vi Tawa coaching. So, no quarterback and no head coach. How exactly do you see the Wolfpack winning this game? Their defense? Well, yeah, their defense is pretty good. Dom Peterson, Jordan Lee, Tristan Nichols, Burdale Robbins, Diane Henley, Sam Hammond, and AJ King. I just don't see them slowing down this really good Broncos offense enough to compensate for the fact that they're playing with their backup quarterback and an interim head coach. The reality is, I think this game is going to be a rout. I think it'll be over very quickly. I think Western Michigan is going to steamroll Nevada. Brooklyn Nets Show comes your way tonight. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show will come your way either late morning or early afternoon every day this week. Usually it's every afternoon, but again, with the bowl games getting started early, the times have to be flexible. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at RealJacobValk so you know when these shows are posted. Subscribe and turn on notifications wherever you consume this podcast so you don't miss anything that way. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.